Welcome to our podcast. This is Friends on Fire.
I'm Mike. I'm a lifelong devotee of financial independence. I even wrote a book about it.
And I'm Maggie, a newer convert, but just as passionate, especially on the intersection of minimalism and financial independence.
We're one and the same.
We are two like-minded friends who believe that talking about money with your friends and family opens the door to financial well-being.
The Friends on Fire podcast is about dispelling myths, building financial acumen, and sharing your financial independence journey with the people you care about.
This is Friends on Fire.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, Maggie.
What's going on?
Oh, you know, the usual. Sitting at home in my sweatpants.
Nice. I just got back from a trip to Aldi. Price is right on. I know you can't see my grocery cart full of things, but like, how much do you spend when you go to Aldi?
Well,
on average?
Before the pandemic, it was maybe like $110. Now, for some reason, we're spending like $150 to $175.
So I feel the same way. I literally was thinking about this while I was shopping tonight. I was just like, oh, I just wanted to I wanted to make this a smaller trip. And why do I have all this stuff in my cart? And I'm just like, everybody is eating so much. The adults, the kids, everybody. Mm-hmm. And I think we've made this joke before, but it is not a joke. You and me, Mike, we used to get fed like almost every day at work. There was always a meeting over lunch. There was always leftover food in the break room. I would eat dinner sometimes at work because there was just like leftover, Mexican from lunch or something. And I was like, well, I don't want this to go to waste. So I'd like pack up a to-go container of it,
That's right.
And I think that is like legitimately increasing our cost of groceries.
I think so too. I've also noticed that I definitely eat breakfast and drink more coffee when I'm at home. I also snack a lot more because I'm around the kitchen. And so there are just more times that I'm entering my kitchen and grabbing food throughout the day. And it adds up.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny. I walk and run. I don't run more because I still like run consistently, but I walk a lot more than I used to before when I was like, commuting every day. And I often am like, well, how come I'm not like losing weight? I'm getting like so much more exercise in than I used to. But it's because I'm eating a ridiculous amount of food. So I think I've at least been able to like, balance the two. Mm-hmm. Okay. So speaking of balance, we're going to talk about something interesting today that has been on my mind a lot lately. And there's something recently that like prompted my thought on this, but we are going to talk about the two sides of entitlement. Because Mike, like, what do you think when you hear the word entitlement? Like, what comes to mind to you? Like, good thoughts, bad thoughts? Like, what do you think it is?
Typically bad thoughts, because I think the most frequent use of the word is in reference to people thinking they deserve something when they don't.
Yeah.
And so that's the only time anybody ever brings up that word. And if you follow politics, everybody refers to like Social Security as an entitlement program. Even though, I'm not sure that qualifies, but they use it as a negative term. That's why they call it that thing. They want it to have that connotation.
I agree with you. I think the term entitlement usually comes with negative connotations and it does have negative meaning, right? There's also a flip side to it, which we'll get into and is an interesting kind of philosophical debate around the concept of entitlement, particularly how it ties to your personal finances. We're going to just talk through this a bit. But I agree with you. I mean, I think it has negative connotations. I think you often picture like trust fund kids or people that are super wealthy and feel entitled to a certain lifestyle or, whatever. And it has those sort of negative angles and views to it. But the definition of the word itself, entitlement, is the belief that you are deserving of something or that you have the right to something. And that's where I think like, if you really like break down the definition, there's a good side of entitlement too. Again, that word itself always has like a negative angle on it. And it can be a very fine and nuanced line. But to me, the good side of entitlement is, if you've back to that definition, right? A belief that you are deserving of something or that you have the right to something. If you've worked really hard for something in your life and then you got something as a result of it, like, well, you should feel entitled, right? You should feel like your confidence has now grown in yourself and your abilities. And you're like, yeah, I worked really hard to get that thing. And now I earned it. And I did deserve it, and I, the term have a right to something is a little dicey and debatable, but just to say that you deserve something is not a bad thing, right? Again, there's so many angles and layers to this. What I think is most interesting about it, Mike, and that we talk about a lot is how the term relates to your personal finances, right? So we talk a lot about like keeping up with the Joneses and lifestyle inflation and things like that. And I think a lot of those things are very related to entitlement. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. Sort of. Why don't you elaborate?
That wasn't like a setup. Like you're like, maybe not. I just think like, okay, this is kind of a silly example, but we were just talking about Aldi. I just went grocery shopping right before we recorded this. And there could be people who think, I make a lot of money. I have plenty of money. Like I deserve a, fancier, bougier shopping experience, whatever term you want to use, like I want to go to Whole Foods which AKA whole paycheck, whatever. They might feel entitled that because they make a lot of money or because they have money or because they can afford it or, whatever it might be, that they feel entitled and should have XYZ, right? So you remember I always reference the documentary Playing with Fire, which I love, and I've read the book also. And the wife in Playing with Fire kind of goes through this journey with her car. She drove a BMW at the time. And she was like, I work hard, I do well, I earn this money, and I like my car, right? And I deserve it, right? And there was a little bit of like entitlement, right? And again, not in a, you could argue it's not like good entitlement or bad entitlement, it's somewhat neutral. But when it comes to your personal finances, feeling entitled to things could be a very expensive feeling, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. But also feeling entitled to live your life a certain way or do things the way that you think they should be done, not the way that other people think they should be done. So it's not just about buying things. I think that comes with like the bad side of entitlement. And entitlement could give you some of the confidence and the direction to make very positive changes in your life. If you feel that you are deserving of those things, deserving of the opportunity to go pursue a different life, that's where a lot of people who pursue FIRE get their motivation from. It's the good entitlement.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree. And that's why like my point of view is, I mean, it could feel like we're going to like talk in circles on this, but I personally
every episode, Maggie.
I personally think breaking down and debating some of these topics are what we talk about. It's talking about money and your feelings and emotions tied to money because it makes you more aware of what that relationship is. And then it makes you be able to create better habits. And so, my personal view on this is if you really break down and think about all the different layers to entitlement, you can focus on sharpening the good side of entitlement and dulling the bad side of entitlement, right? Trying to be more aware of when you feel entitled to certain nice things just because you have the money or something like that. Versus, the good side of it is, like we talk about, particularly in FIRE and financial independence, you've worked really hard to earn this money. And so save it. And if that gives you a great sense of confidence currently and in the future, like that's a great feeling of entitlement of like, you've deserved something, and you have the right to something and you've worked very hard for it. Right. And that to me is kind of that good angle that you want to play up more and feed versus like, you don't want to feed the bad side of it.
Yeah. And we talk about the bad side of it pretty frequently on the show in different contexts. But, what always comes up at work, and we see this situation with a lot of people, young and old, is that people feel very entitled to a paycheck, entitled to a certain type of job, entitled to the benefits they get. And as a result, they don't save money, they overspend. And one of the things that we like to harp on, especially when it came to like when we had our pay reductions due to the onset of the pandemic and people were losing their jobs, is that you are not entitled to a job. you can provide a value to a company and that company can compensate you for it. But there is no like rule of the universe that requires some company to hire you and pay you a lot of money and let you do whatever you want. Like that is a pretty big part of entitlement that I think a lot of people suffer from.
Yeah. You and I talk about this a lot because we are both in roles where we've had to deal with letting people go, right? You're on the financial side of things. So it's like you make the decisions of like, you got to cut. I'm just kidding.
No, I do not make those decisions.
I know. But
don't turn it right against me.
But you're often like aware of them, right? Because there's often a financial angle to things. And so you and I have, sometimes been behind the scenes having these discussions when we are in situations like that. And it is interesting because I personally think, when you feel entitled to a certain job or that your company owes you something other than just like being a nice company and, treating you well and all of those things. But when you approach work in particular from that angle, I don't think there's two angles. I don't think you work as hard when you feel entitled to have a certain type of job because you just kind of like take it for granted. And then I also think back to the point you just made, Mike, you're less likely to be saving money, right? You might be, you just think it's going to be there all the time, right? You don't think it could go away at any moment. And I just think that's a tough mindset to have. And so to me, one of the bad sides of entitlement is that it can create this mindset of certain emotions and expectations that are very hard to manage. So if you are constantly approaching life and feeling entitled to certain things, like I said, you may not work as hard and you may just constantly be disappointed. So, I've said this and I genuinely mean this. If my company were suddenly, I've worked really hard for the past 13 years. I've been at the same company. If all of a sudden I lost my job tomorrow, I wouldn't take it personally. I know there's a million factors that could impact that. And I've been treated well over the time that I've been there. And I don't feel entitled that they like owe me a job in the future. I feel like they need to pay me for the job I'm currently doing. And I think, approaching life in that way, again, it creates a better mindset and, the right emotional connection to the work you're doing. Does that make sense? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I understand what you mean. And if you don't approach it that way, you will constantly see yourself as the victim because a lot of these things are not going to go your way. Like you are not entitled to a raise every year. You are not entitled to a bonus every year. And as I mentioned, you're just not entitled to a job. Like this is something you have to continually work for. And if you don't, and something happens to you and you make yourself the victim of it, that is something that is very tough to shake. And I'll tell you, I've known a lot of people at work who have this victim mentality when it comes to this entitlement they have for things going their way, especially around money or about promotions or about all these sorts of things. And like other people pick up on that. And if you are constantly making yourself the victim because you don't get your way, you will not get your way and you're probably going to find yourself out of a job.
Yeah. And this, to me, I often think about like the scarcity mindset or even just the idea of like a growth versus fixed mindset. Like if you're approaching life from a victim mentality, from a scarcity mindset, from a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset, you're making yourself unnecessarily miserable and just and that's kind of my point on like it creates all these emotions and expectations that are just, they're not founded in reality. Right. And so I think there's a lot of things that you can do to better mentally prepare yourself and take more accountability, which is funny. We're talking about the word entitlement today, but accountability is one of my favorite words, which maybe we can talk about in a future episode where we break down the two sides of accountability.
Ooh, we'll do a whole episode about it.
This is going to turn into like a dictionary podcast and people are going to be like, wait a minute. I don't want to hear you break down the definitions of words every week. So let's talk about the good side of entitlement a bit, Mike.
Okay. I rather enjoyed talking about the bad side of entitlement, but I will pivot. Let's talk about the good side.
Actually, while we're pivoting, there was a cool
Wait, we're gonna insert another topic mid pivot.
Totally. It's going to help us pivot. So
Okay.
I think it's related to helping us
I'm
pivot.
sure it's not, but I'd like to hear it.
What the Fi Guy, which is an Instagram handle. He has a blog and a very active Instagram account. And he's always posting like great quotes that are related to, financial independence and personal finance. And he posted a quote a couple days ago that said, "The secret to having it all is believing you already do." I love that quote. Did you get that? You want me to say it again? The secret, I like how you're like, I got it, but I'm going to say it again anyways.
You feel entitled to just say whatever you want on the show.
I feel
but
super entitled.
You deserve it. It is your show.
I've worked hard for that, I feel entitled to my 50% of their time. Really, let's call it 75%.
85.
Okay, 90. We'll agree. We'll settle on 90. Okay, so back to the quote. The secret to having it all is believing you already do. I like that. It's a fairly appropriate, I think, segue into the good side of entitlement, right? So, and I say that because so much of this is mindset based. And I think there's so much around personal finance that is heavily mindset based in your perspective and, having a confidence in what you need to make you happy in life. And again, feeling less entitled can help you live more below your means and be okay shopping at Aldi, even though you could afford to shop somewhere else because you take value in kind of where your money goes and you want to save for the future. So some of the good sides of entitlement, back to the definition itself, is the belief that you are deserving of something or that you have the right to something. And so using like that work example that we were talking about kind of in our careers, Mike, there could be a lot of things where you work really hard for something, perhaps it's at work, and you believe you deserve good things as a result. And often those good things do come, right? So tons of time people may work hard and, the stars don't always align and there's not, a promotion or an increase or whatever it might be. But a lot of times it does, right? A lot of times you put in really hard work into something and something good happens as a result. And it's good for you to feel entitled and that like you deserve those things, right? And I think the word deserve is a good phrase or just that you earned those things, right? And so it doesn't mean that you then have to go and spend all of the money that you may have earned through working really hard. But because then that would defeat the purpose of working so hard in many ways. If you value the idea of more financial freedom in your future and not, being chained to a certain job or to, a ton of debt or whatever it might be. I feel like I'm all over the place, Mike.
Every episode, Maggie. Why is this now just occurring to you?
I don't know, just on this one.
Yes, this was like a very philosophical Maggie episode. So let me jump in with another positive side of entitlement. If you have a steady stream of income, you could feel entitled to continually having that income. And when you don't get it, it's a bad thing. But if you have spent a long time saving and keeping your lifestyle in check, then you can have a sense of entitlement for having the freedom to do what you want because you have earned that. You deserve that opportunity, and there is nothing that is going to hold you back from doing it. So if you have become financially independent, you can definitely feel entitled to quit your job whenever it doesn't make you happy. And that is your right, and it will improve your life, and you have that ability.
Yeah. And you and I talk about that point a lot, Mike, in the sense that, we talk about on the happiness episode, we've talked about it from a number of angles, but what you were just talking about, like that type of product of hard work and focus and discipline and everything else, and the benefits that you can reap from it could breed a lot of confidence, right? And confidence is a really good thing. Like to have confidence, particularly in your finances and in where you are from a personal finance standpoint, it's an amazing feeling. I believe it can bring you a great deal of happiness. And we talked about that a lot in one of our episodes around happiness. And we probably talk about it all the time. And that's a good example of, if you've been really disciplined and you've led your life in a certain way and you've save for the future and you've reached, fat fire, coast fire, all these different types of, financial independence terms that have been coined, you should feel really good about it. You should feel proud of what you have accomplished in life. And you should feel entitled to that because you've worked so hard for it and you deserve it, right? You've put the hard work in, and that's a good thing. Yeah?
Yeah, I agree.
Another thing related to this topic that's been on my mind a lot lately, Mike?
I think you're going to tell me.
I've said it a few times on this episode and a few times in some recent episodes. It's hard work, just the concept of hard work. And the reason it's been on my mind lately is I see so much marketing to me, particularly towards like content marketers and all these classes and courses and things where they're particularly on like social media. And there's a lot in the financial independence space also that are very gimmicky and are selling you to like get rich quick. Mm-hmm. And like, if you just take this course, like it's going to fix your life. I'm going to show you how to make lots of money without having to work very much. And I'm going to show you how you can, do this. And look, I'm not saying that hasn't worked for some people. And I'm a big fan of like 4-hour work week and the idea of passive income and, like working smarter, not harder. But 99% of the people who, that's a Maggie stat, right? Yeah. I saw you smiling when I said 99%. 98.3% of the people who have been successful and are actually making money at something have put in a lot of hard work. It did not happen overnight. And I think that is an incredibly important point that I just been thinking a lot about lately, again, because I see so many things that are like different multi-level marketing schemes and different things where it's just people are marketing, trying to convince somebody that there's some sort of like get rich quick scheme. And that's a great example of the bad side of entitlement. Like, you are not entitled to magically make a bunch of money for doing very little work. Yes, it has happened for some people, but it is the minority. The majority of people who have money and are able to reach financial independence, are living debt free, have paid off their mortgages, or are very confident in where they're at from a personal finance standpoint. The majority of those people have worked incredibly hard and they've put the time in and they've put a lot of energy and hard work into whatever it is that they do.
And I'd also add that when you are pursuing something that requires a lot of work, if you can avoid the sense of entitlement to reaching a certain success level, it will increase your satisfaction of the process. I think back to last week we talked about, we just reached 30,000 downloads. We do not feel, well, I will speak for myself. I do not feel entitled to having anybody listen to our show. I do not assume that if we just put something out there, we're going to get people to listen. Like, we have to work hard. We have to come up with topics. We have to do a good job because we want to produce a good product that makes people want to listen, and we don't take that for granted. And as a result, we hit 30. That's huge. We feel great about it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point and a good example too. Okay, can we shift to the top 3 takeaways, or do you want to talk a little bit more?
I am curious what the 3 top takeaways are going to be for this rambling episode.
I don't know. You didn't come up with 3 takeaways? I'm just kidding. Okay.
I don't feel entitled to having 3 takeaways presented to me.
I feel like you feel entitled that I have to write the show notes for this episode that I came up with.
Sometimes right? I do. You're right.
When really I'd like to just lob a topic over to you and be like, could you write it up? Which I also sometimes do. So it sounds like I'm pretty entitled. It's funny. And then we're going to get to the 3 takeaways. With what you were just talking about, Mike, I was also I thought you were about to say something different that I was then thinking. And so now I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
But the other thing about hard work and putting in the time and not feeling entitled about it is it will let you approach things from a low ego. And again, from an abundance mindset, not a scarcity mindset. And I think that can have such a more positive impact on your relationships and the people around you. And again, it all, ties back to your own happiness if you want to think about it from that angle. But going into things and not feeling entitled and recognizing that you have to work hard for things, it's an angle of humility, right? And I'm personally, I think humility is incredibly important, particularly in more professional settings, but really in all aspects of life, right?
Yeah.
The presidency, any role. I'm not sure why that one's on my mind, but you know, any job you have as a parent, something you're getting paid to do, whatever it might be, like humility is incredibly important. Humility, hard work. I got a lot of H's, by the way. Hustle. I really do. I got a lot of H words of like things that are important to me. And they really are like hard work, hustle, humility.
Heart.
I actually used to have one that was hunger also, which kind of had like a double play on it, which is like, I'm usually really hungry and I'm always eating in meetings back when there was food at work. And I'm also very hungry to like figure things out and learn things. So I like anyways, you don't want to hear about my H's, do you?
No, I don't. Not even sure why you brought it up. All right. Let's move on to the top 3 takeaways.
Let's move on. Okay.
Number 1, understand what entitlement is. I'm not really sure if I understand what it is after that episode. I think I'm more confused than when we started, but try to, for yourself, figure out the good and the bad side of entitlement and how it relates to your life.
Number 2. That was funny. 1B. That was funny, Mike. Number 2, avoid, this sounds really obvious, but avoid the bad sides of entitlement, right? So don't take things for granted. Work hard for what you want in life.
And number 3, again, very obvious. Focus on the good side.
Okay, you got to say it without laughing. Can you
Who
get
wrote
it
these
out?
takeaways?
I thought you wrote them.
All right. I can't do it without laughing.
Okay, I'll read it. And then this is funny. Number 3, focus on the good side of entitlement. I was about to say entanglement, but because I'm just confused now. This is a very entangled episode. Number 3, focus on the good side of entitlement. If you've worked hard for something, you should feel really good when you've achieved it. You should take that confidence and help pivot into a very purpose-led life, which is some of what we were talking about at some point in this episode, I think. I'm not really sure, but who knows? Could have been. So the 2 sides of entanglement. Just kidding.
That's right.
Mike just can't stop laughing now.
Oh, man. You're in peak form tonight, Maggie.
I don't have a Mike's Minute on the mic. Anything you want to ask me?
I have a Maggie's Minute on the mic.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Tell me a time when you felt entitled to something, you didn't get it, and you were disappointed.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
that's a
dig
really
deep.
good question. Wow. That I felt entitled to something. Okay. You know I can't do anything in 60 seconds, but I'll just preface my answer. Does my preface count towards my 60 seconds?
Clock's running.
Okay. I'll just preface this by saying I rarely feel entitled to things. So I often joke that it's because I played so many sports when I was in high school and I was really bad at all of them. I spent a lot of time on the bench and I built a lot of humility at a young age of like, I was around a lot of people that were better at me than a lot of things. And so it creates a lack of entitlement and a good sense of humility. And yeah, so
10 seconds.
Ask me the question again.
Tell me about it. This is 1 minute. Tell me about a time you felt entitled for something, you didn't get it, and you were disappointed.
I mean, this is a really deep answer that you probably want something like a little bit more simple. But I will say the only thing I can think of, which is like, to me, one of the most, I'm very thankful for many things in my life that I've just not faced a massive amount of adversity or loss. And when I got divorced, God, I don't know how, I was married for 10 years. I don't know how many years ago it was now, but a lot of years ago. It was very sudden to me and I was not expecting it. And I didn't really understand or realize that there was like a problem that was certainly to the extent of the problem that was there. And so to me, I think I felt entitled to like a long, happy marriage in a way, right? I just sort of thought like, oh, that just happens magically and everything, is fine or whatever. I didn't like know anybody who was divorced or any of that. And so to me, first off, on the flip side, I'm much happier now. I don't think I fully like realized kind of that there was something better for both of us out there. But I definitely, felt, I think my reaction to it was a bit of like entitlement that I just did not even recognize that there was a problem or that there was a kind of different way to live. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that was
about
not
as much as this entire episode does.
right. That was a deep answer.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it might be one of the only, I have a low entitlement. Like I like we talked about on when I say like, if I lost my job tomorrow, like, yeah, I'd be upset, but I wouldn't be like mad at anyone. I wouldn't feel entitled. I don't think anybody owes me anything. I'm very thankful for anything I get. And I don't think people owe me things.
That's great. I think that's the positive side of entitlement.
Yeah. Well, that's why I say like, that's a great question you asked me, but I can't think of a lot of great answers.
All right. Well, if you think of some more, we can bring it up on a future episode. Okay. All right. Well, that was a rambling but interesting episode. Thank you for suggesting it, Maggie. And thanks everybody for listening. If you've been challenged or inspired by what you've heard, please rate and review the show. You can also subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode. And if you have any thoughts or questions, especially around entitlement or entanglement, we'd love to hear from you. And you can leave us a voicemail or text us at 404-981-3370 or hit us up on Instagram or Facebook.
Cool. So we're definitely agreeing we're going to do a part 2 that's on the 2 sides of entanglement, right?
Yes.
Okay.
The 8 sides of entanglement.
The 27 pieces of being entangled.
All right. Thanks, Maggie.
Okay.
This was fun.
Thanks, Mike. Bye.